All right. Welcome to 5G and Coffee. How secure is 5G? Today we're going to be talking all about 5G security, all the myths, all the facts. We've got some great people with us today. I'm going to switch over to our introduction slide here. If it wants to cooperate, there we go. Today we're joined by Jacob Perry and Josh Zeller. Jacob is our Tech Lab Manager here at RCN Technologies, while Josh has the awesome job of R&D product development for all of our connectivity solutions. Lastly, my name is Mark Indelicato, and I'm also the Content Marketing Specialist for RCN Technologies, as well as your host today. Jacob and Josh, how are you guys doing?
Doing great, Mark.
Yeah, awesome. Doing fantastic, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a great show today. Well, Jacob's been on several of these webinars with me. I believe this is the first time we've had Josh on here. So instead of the traditional kind of 5G recap that we do, I thought it'd be fun to have our guests answer 3 questions about 5G. So starting, what is your favorite advantage of 5G compared to LTE? Jacob, I'm going to let you tackle this first.
Yeah, this one's easy. Capacity. The amount of capacity that we're going to get out of 5G rather than 4G is so important, and it's honestly one of the most exciting things about 5G. The problem has been we've had technology for a long time, and we've been capable of connecting a lot of things to the internet. The problem has literally been we've not had enough internet.
Right.
Since LTE had such a limited amount of congruent clients that could be connected to it, we couldn't just start rolling out all these crazy advancements. And so as a result, 5G, I said earlier that 5G isn't about what it's giving us, it's about what it's taking away. And it's taking away a really big limitation of ours.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. That's actually my favorite bit as well. I want to say I might have heard it from you, an analogy of, being at the mall on a weekend and, trying to connect with your phone when it's real busy and not having anything. And after I heard that, I mean, I've had that happen to me and it's so frustrating. So that just even just talking from a business sense is still my favorite part of 5G. Mm-hmm. Josh, what are you interested in?
I'm torn about it. Let's just pick one thing, I guess. But I guess the 2 main things that are most exciting to me will be the lower latency that 5G is going to allow us to have, as well as a standardization, which I think that's the one I lean more towards as being like my primary one of it's kind of a fresh start for cellular networks. And I think the standardization is really going to play into what we're going to talk to today. And it's really going to open the opportunity to have just a fresh start.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask you about it, but if it's going to play into to some of our other stuff, I'll leave it for now. Let's see. What's the next question here? What excites you about the future of 5G? Josh, I'll have you take this one first.
In the future, when like millimeter wave and 5G really becomes what it could be, it reaches its full potential, there's going to be an extreme low latency, as well as IoT's proliferance. It's going to be everywhere. IoT is already more and more. We got smart fridges, smart watches, cars, but it really it's not going to stop. And it's going to be every single object you have at some point is going to become part of the Internet of Things. And 5G is going to give us that, bandwidth and capacity, like Jake was talking about, to be able to do that, as well as, just like a uniformity to it. That, and then eventually, it's going to allow us to do, I don't know if cloud computing is the right term for it, but it will allow us to, with that low latency and the capacity that we're going to have, we're going to be able to do amazing things with devices where more and more computing can be done remotely or elsewhere, and then the data connection is going to allow the communication to happen so quickly. It's as if it was happening on the device itself, which really makes size is no longer going to be an issue with IoT things, which is still a concern right now.
Right, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely going to allow those networks to expand quite a bit. And it's interesting what you're saying too. I've seen so many people. It's not a complaint as much as maybe more of an observation. It's like, you can't even work on your car anymore. There's so many gadgets and computers and stuff in it. And that's step one, right? We're going to be getting up way up here with 5G. Jacob, what's got you excited about the future?
Yeah, I mean, in an attempt to not have it kind of be a rehash of the last question, I mean, definitely capacity, definitely latency is such a big part of 5G, and it's going to be such a big part of what 5G is going to be capable of. And that's so exciting. But I think we've talked about it on other webinars before, but often with new technology, the most exciting thing is the thing that nobody's thought of yet. And in 5 to 10 years, someone is going to think of a capability that we never saw coming. I mean, whenever 4G and LTE came out, we had no idea what social media was going to turn into in our world, and now it basically runs our world. We're going to see something similar with 5G, and there's no way to predict what that thing is. And I'm really excited to find out what it's going to be.
Yeah, me too. I want to say, like, wasn't it around like Motorola Razr time that like 4G first started coming about? And do I have my timeline right, or am I off a little bit?
Yeah, not too far after that, maybe. I feel
like the first iPhone was like the iPhone 3G, right? I mean, that was like his whole thing. That would have been right around the time that the Razr was like really popular. So it was like just shortly after that, 4G would come out.
So that time period just between then and now, and if you look at how different technology is, and you know, it definitely would have been difficult to predict that that advancement of technology, and then this one's just going to be even more so, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I am really excited about that. I mean, it's kind of teeters on science fiction, but you just get to imagine. But you can never know where technology is going to be. I would have never predicted, back before we had internet in my house, and now like I have internet literally everywhere,
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy.
It's exponential,
Right. Oh yeah. So let's move into our third question here. Let me pop it up on this screen. What is the most important thing an organization should know when moving to 5G? I think this is an interesting one. Let's go Jacob first.
Yeah. First thing I think of is coverage. That's such a big one. So many people are in such a hurry to get into 5G that nobody's asking whether or not it's in their area, and of course the companies that are providing it aren't being super clear about whether or not it's in your area. And so many times people will get it in and they'll say, oh, we're experiencing the exact same services before. Well, most, if not all, 5G equipment today is backwards compatible to accept 4G, because if your 5G iPhone could only accept 5G, you would be hurting in a lot of places.
Oh, sure.
And so people are like, why are we experiencing the same speeds? And it's because you don't have 5G in this area yet. And I think the other big one that comes to mind is really understanding the advantages of, if you do have 5G in your area, I don't know if being appreciative is the right word, but understanding a little better what the low and mid band space allow you to do. You're not necessarily going to see breakneck speeds like we're going to see with millimeter wave, but people who are trying their best to get millimeter wave in their homes are more likely to experience less, what's the word I'm looking for, dependency. It's less dependent because of how many things can interrupt that signal.
Right.
The low and mid band space is much more dependable, can go much farther, and still provides you a great number of advantages over LTE. It's just that the strongest switch may not be its speed.
Right, for sure. The first part of your answer really intrigued me there. It's funny, I'm completely blanking on it now. So 5G being in your area. So number one, do you know how, and I know each network's gonna be different, like what the definition of that is, right? So if I were to, I guess, call up, AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile or somebody, and they're like, oh, it's in your area. Is that like, 100 feet from me? Is that my county? Is that my region? Like what does that mean? And then secondly, how would you find out that information?
Gosh, it is extremely difficult to find out. And for most consumers, I think it's going to be sometimes borderline not possible to find out in certain areas, which is really a shame. But what's really cool is that there's actually a multitude, if you really want to get into the weeds with it, there's a multitude of websites that actually allow you to track cellular towers that are in your areas. And they'll actually give you the serial code of that cell tower. And it'll say like T-Mobile's on this cell tower, and you can call up T-Mobile enterprise support and say, hey, T-Mobile, tower G71, what bands do you have running on that tower?
Okay.
And theoretically, they should be able to tell you that answer.
Right. Awesome. Josh, same question. What is the most important thing an organization should know when moving to 5G?
I think I've talked about latency a lot already. I think something that's really easy to not understand that I think should be explained is the difference between like download speeds or bandwidth versus latency. A really simple analogy to use is a car traveling on an interstate. The car's how many miles per hour it goes is latency, while either the amount of lanes on the highway or the size of the storage in the car is like your bandwidth. So you can move, you have like high bandwidth, like fast download speed. You can move large packets of data, but how quickly it reaches its destination after you requested it or vice versa, that's latency. And that, to me, in most use cases is going to be where you're actually seeing a huge difference with 5G versus 4G or, slower latency.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and so the capacity, if I'm understanding your analogy correctly, the capacity kind of ties in too, right? So if you have 1,000 cars entering town on a 1-lane road, they can't go very fast. But if you have like an 8-lane highway or something, they're going to be moving pretty well, right? Is that correct?
And that's right. I mean, cars can go faster with lower latency. The more lanes, there's a bigger capacity. You have more bandwidth as well. The packets are moving. Yeah, it all plays together. It's really, they both matter, I guess. You're going to be bottlenecked on one side or the other. But for most use cases, you don't really need to be able to download giant files that quickly. It's more about how quickly you can communicate point to point. And that's what you can see.
But that's downloading those giant files. That's some great, from a marketing guy, that's some great marketing, It's like, hey, look how fast I downloaded this movie. But,
it's incredible. I mean, I think it's fantastic. I just think some people get excited about the wrong thing there a little bit.
Yeah,
it's really exciting as well.
Right, and I was joking, but that's not to take away. There are going to be some really cool applications that will happen on high band as well. Just the majority of business is still going to be on low and mid band, right? Yeah. So this is the main section of today's session. There we go. We're going to talk about just 5G security in general. If you guys have any questions, again, be sure to throw them in that Q&A section. We'll address them at the end of the seminar. So with that being said, we'll move on to our first question. Is 5G more secure than 4G? Do either of you want to tackle this first?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll go ahead and say something we thought would be fun for this sort of thing. Josh is an absolutely brilliant engineer and still learning a lot of the space of 5G, but has been doing a lot of reading on it. So for each of these questions, we think it would be a lot of fun to just have Josh answer the question to the best of his abilities, and then me being the resident 5G expert, I'll come in and say that's it's absolutely right. Or vice versa, and we'll just kind of take it that way. And I think I have faith, though. I think Josh is going to have a good handle on these.
Awesome.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that I thought sounded like a cool idea to me was the more I read about this, the more I realized how non-consumable most of the information you'll read about 5G is, especially like security in relation to 5G. So I did my best to extrude what I could, but I can't imagine, especially a layperson who isn't in this industry at all, trying to understand this.
Even as someone who is in this industry, I mean, a lot of it reads like legal text to me, So
reads like stereo instructions, right?
Yeah, we'll try and make it a lot easier to digest for sure.
All right, so is 5G more secure than 4G? Based on my research, absolutely. For a number of reasons. Number one being there's a standardization taking place with 5G through different things that are required in communication between the networks. Something called mutual authentication, where, as far as I understand it, both sides, both the sender and the receiver, need to verify that they're talking to who they think they're talking to, which is different than LTE was, or just 4G. There's also a really interesting thing that I didn't know. So So like 5G is the 5th generation of this technology. I mean, we have 4G and the 3G, you know, but really 3G and 4G and everything prior was all the same network that we've just been slowly adapting over time and just kind of held together by duct tape and dreams and just like hoping that it would like, we did our best. They did incredible things getting the old technology to function on the new standardizations, but as a result, there's a lot of inconsistencies across that network. And the fact that 5G is actually a fresh start of new towers and the new standardization, it gives the opportunity to do a lot more advanced things, and certainly more secure because of it. Especially something referred to as network slicing, which I kind of understand now. I'd love to hear Jacob explain it to me again. But it essentially allows you to, instead of looking at like the network as one solid piece that everybody's traveling on, you can section off individual lanes for everybody so that you play in your one lane and it's tailored encrypted to your communication point. So there's no crossover in the traffic, that everybody gets to live and communicate in their tunnel. And because of that, it's more tailored to each individual connection as far as security is concerned.
Okay. Is it essentially just one network that's been kind of split off? I mean, like if you were connecting with your phone, you know, it'd be like going to a hotel and you see, you know, hotel main, hotel guest, right? Like, is it like that except for not literally being two separate ones? Or yeah?
That's a way of looking at it, yeah.
Okay.
Josh, did you have anything else to add on that?
I think an analogy I had read was like, yeah, it was like an apartment building where every flat has its own key and you can only go in your door. But it is like, instead of just a giant hangout zone, you know, it's like everybody's got their lease and their design space to have their traffic.
Oh, that's a much better analogy than I had.
I like that analogy a lot because, you know, you still have the same amount of access to the apartment building as everybody else who lives in it. And unfortunately, it also is a good analogy of showing how, you know, you don't not have access to your neighbor's doors, right? You could get in there and most people can. It would just cause a lot of irreparable damage and probably a fun time in a cell. But it's possible. And that's the thing with networking is that we can put up locked doors, but every time you put up a locked door, there's someone else trying to figure out how to crack it. Yeah, Josh, I think you hit all of that right on the head. I think I'm really just going to be adding on to that. So, I mean, first thing, of course, mutual authentication is going to be huge for 5G. Like you were saying, you know, it's no longer your phone receiving a certain frequency and just taking it. Don't even care what it is. You know, that's the frequency I'm supposed to get. That's what I'm receiving. And that doesn't matter too much whenever you have, you know, AT&T and it emits an X frequency and you receive that frequency and it's just always going to be AT&T. You're never going to accidentally pick up Verizon or T-Mobile. But one of the problems with that is what's known as, I believe it's IMIS attacks or catchers. Can't remember the acronym right off the top of my head, but basically it's just a system that can intercept frequencies of cellular technology. One of the most problematic things about it, weirdly enough, is actually that it's used majority of the time in law enforcement. So federal agents and things like that. If you ever heard, you know, analogies about creepy black vans hanging out in a neighborhood, that's actually more than likely what they're doing is they're running a scanner. And what those devices do essentially is they pretend to be your 4G tower. So if the suspect that they're watching has AT&T, they say AT&T runs on these frequencies, we're going to emit these frequencies through our wire and listen and see everything that person is doing on their phone.
Oh, wow.
The reason why this is a problem moving into the 5G space, but really quick, so 5G is a two-way street. So not only is the tower saying, hey, I want to give you data, your device or your cell phone or whatever it may be is also saying, wait, I'm going to check if you're allowed to give me data. And so that's going to add a lot better security layer, and it's going to prevent those kinds of attacks, because the reason why law enforcement using it is a problem is because law enforcement is still going to be using it whenever it comes to 5G. And what that means is that technology that can be used to harm security can't be used if it's not been invented. And because this particular thing kind of has to be invented, we always have to be on the look for it.
Right.
We've already got devices. I discovered that there's a device that some people are calling stingrays that actually are really good at not only emitting the correct frequency to tap into someone's phone, but also relaying that information back to appear to be a secure source. So we're already seeing ways around this, but it makes the average person who would have this ability, somebody who was doing this as a criminal action, in the 4G space, can't just pick it up in the 5G space and be ready to start listening to conversations.
Yeah.
Which is really, really great. And so, like you were saying, network slicing is really awesome, because with 4G and with a lot of internet, someone's AT&T service is always going to be pushed right along with someone else's AT&T service that is also in your same city. It all just kind of gets thrown in the same pot. It's kind of like a mail sorting room,
Right.
Where it all just gets thrown into the same basket, and then somebody has to go through and be like, Jeff, James, Carl, but it all is touching at some point. Whereas network slicing kind of allows you to keep your mail with just your mail and nobody else's.
Right.
Everybody's got their own designated mail rooms, and it's like, oh, that's James' mail room. It doesn't enter with any other mail. We make sure of it. And so that's really good, because obviously whenever you're starting to put a lot of data together, if somebody does have something malicious amongst that data and they say, I just want to find out what all the letters around me are doing, it has the feasible capability to do that. And so slicing is going to prevent that to a large degree.
Right, because that's the thing, right? Like encryption can be, cracked, but
Yeah.
if everything's individually encrypted, then like you don't get that big score of data. You're going to get one lane, and that's it.
Yeah.
To put that to like a real life example, I heard on a previous webinar, and correct me if I misunderstood this, but I believe it was a retail application. So say you have digital signage outside that you can remotely update. You have a POS system, you have your Wi-Fi, you have maybe a few other connected devices. You can slice all of those individually. So say someone was able to hack into the sign outside. I mean, they would have access to that, but they wouldn't have your entire network that way, just because everything's segmented that. Correct? Like that's like I guess a real world advantage to using that.
So what you're actually talking about there is just VLANing. So that it's a perfect example. It basically works the exact same way. I was actually going to bring it up as a really good example of how slicing kind of works. So in my own home, actually, I have smart devices, and I've sectioned off my network, and I've created 2 separate VLANs for my smart devices, my Alexa, and things like that. And I also have a section for my computer where I do, something that's more private, like banking and things like that. Because IoT devices are inherently less secure than computers, it's pretty easy. It's not easy, but you're more capable of getting into their back doors. And so if somebody said, I'm going to break into Jacob's banking account through his Alexa, they would get into my network and then say, what's going on? There's 4 light bulbs and a TV here. And slicing essentially works the exact same way. So that's just, personal networking versus public networking. And the mechanics are all the same. The only thing that really changes is the scale.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. So for the sake of time, I'm actually going to move on to our next question here. We've been, I wasn't sure.
Really good question.
On content here. Okay. Will there come a time when antivirus and firewalls will become obsolete?
I'm very interested to know your answer on this, Josh.
I am as well.
I have a pretty simple answer on this one, and it goes back to the old analogy that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So it doesn't really matter how, I mean, 5G could be virtually uncrackable. But if the endpoint is easily, abusable, then it's meaningless, like, because they'll just go at the weakest point. So basically, yeah, everything we currently have set up to protect ourselves on on the end user side, just as necessary as ever, because like I said, it's only as strong as the weakest point.
Okay. Jacob, what are your thoughts on that?
You hit the nail on the head there, Josh. None of this stuff is going away. In fact, all this stuff is only going to evolve more as time goes on, and our firewalls are going to become more secure. Our software that we're using to protect ourselves is going to become more secure and more advanced. The more attacks that happen, the more these things are going to evolve and become better. I think a lot of people look at network security almost like a layer of doors, where it's like, well, if I invest all this money into the first door, then I don't need to invest any money in the door succeeding, because no one's ever going to get through that first door. Whenever, like you said, it's the weakest link in the chain, or the analogy I had thought of is like, it's kind of like saying the White House is secure enough that the president doesn't need security when he's at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Right.
The data that's being transferred is still there. The president of the United States is still going to the grocery store, and nobody cares about the White House. That's not what they're after. We're after that data, and whenever your data is passing through several different systems, you need to make sure that every single one of them are as secure as the last.
Okay. Excellent. Now you got me wondering how many presidents actually do their own grocery shopping.
Or Jimmy Carter.
Zero.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll keep moving on. 5G will increase the amount of IoT devices exponentially. Will these devices become a security liability? Sort of playing off that weakest link analogy that you guys were just talking about.
Yes. I mean, it kind of already is. So
Yeah.
I've talked a lot today about standardization of 5G and like how great that is. On the security side. IoT suffers right now. The biggest security threat to it is how unstandardized it is. There is so many manufacturers for so many different objects, and none of them, I mean, some manufacturers, have their own standardization, but there's a lot of difference between just light bulbs, like on how secure one is versus the other. And there's really nothing, there's no bodying or organization that's standardizing that and agreeing on, an umbrella for all of it to fit under. So with the more and more of them coming out, and if there isn't an agreed upon standard for IoT going forward, then I think it just becomes more exploitable. I don't see how it doesn't,
Yeah. Okay. Jacob, what are your thoughts there?
You give a pretty resounding yes. I'm going to give a very resounding absolutely. It's something we really need to address, and we really need to keep in mind moving forward. Like I just mentioned it earlier, I section off my smart devices from my other more mission critical devices just in my home, because this is already a problem, and because it's happening to people. The reality of the matter is that as networking and technology becomes more and more complex, the amount of knowledge that the lay person in their own homes needs to be able to use this technology is also going up. And here pretty soon, we're going to kind of have willy-nilly smart devices everywhere in our homes, smart thermostats. I've got 6 Alexas or whatever it's called 10 years from now. My shoes are smart, my door is smart. And every single one of these is a very easy potential for somebody to get into your home. And more importantly, businesses could have hundreds to thousands of devices like this. And if you slip up on one of them, your entire network is disclosed. InfoSec is going to be so important. Segregate your networks. Don't worry so much about those 100 or 1,000 devices that are potential threats, because you've pushed them off to their own room, and you don't need to worry about if somebody cracks into that. I'm not that concerned about it. They're not going to do that much damage. And that's going to be so important going forward. Also, everyone at home, update your devices. So many people, will see the latest update on something and say, what did that do? Why did I spend 30 minutes waiting for my device to update? A lot of those times that was a security breach that was discovered in just one or two cases, and a company was really great enough to find that security breach, identify what it was, and fix it on the back end. You will see no difference on your user experience, but that one gap just got filled a lot of the times with those updates. So very, very important.
Okay, so is that the only solution really? Is well, not just making sure you update your stuff, but splicing off parts of your network. Kind of what I had in mind. So say we're looking at an agriculture implementation, right? So maybe they've got a ton of chickens and they're monitoring temperatures, monitoring I don't even know, tons of things. So what number one, how would they update their thousands of devices? Like, do you go through and do that individually? And number two, what's the best protection for something of that scale, right?
I think sessioning out your network is a must. It's going to be moving forward. I think that the more deployments we see with this, I mean, we already see today, there's hundreds of cloud softwares out there for every single kind of device. My cell phone alone has 3 different device softwares that run different device managers for the 3 different brands of smart devices I have in my home. So, I mean, that's going to make life way easier the more elegant these UIs are getting about being able to manage so many things. Another really small thing is change your default passwords on everything. It's crazy because whenever you start to get to that level, the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And if the link at the end is 1, 2, 3, 4 ABC, well, it's not that hard to run up the rest of the chain after that one. So that's super, super important. I think people think security is this really complicated, convoluted space where there's just a ton of information and technology that nobody understands unless they're in that space. Whenever it's like, no, changing your passwords is cybersecurity. Knowing what you could be exposed to is cybersecurity. An example used all the time. Making sure whenever you're going into your place of business and hitting your key card against the wall and making sure no one's walking behind you, to just walk right in behind you without swiping themselves in, even that's cybersecurity, because you don't know what that person's going to do. You also don't know if they work there.
Right.
So, if I can just expand upon that for just a second, go back to changing your passwords, just make them longer. I know that it doesn't have to be this scary string of characters and numbers you'll never remember. There's just more places, just more characters in the password, then it's so much harder to brute force into. It's just exponentially more time for all the combinations that they'd have to try.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a great point, because the softwares that these people use for attacks, they have systems that run through the first digit of your password, every symbol, number, capital and uncapital thing you could possibly type into there. It can run through all of these in seconds. And it's just running all of these combination locks, but running through all of those symbols on the first digit, but then it's got to run through all of them on the second, the third, the fourth. And it's not just got to find the right one. It's got to find the right one that fits with 3 other things, or maybe it's got to find the right one that fits with 6 other things. And that difficulty gets exponential of how hard it is for a computer to solve that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Awesome. So let's see. We'll move on to our next question here. What issues faced autonomous vehicles and smart cities as 5G becomes more ingrained in society? I love just future talking, so I'm excited for this answer. Josh, can you take this one off?
Yeah, I think this is a really cool one. I mean, not to get too sci-fi with it, but it is weird to think about, autonomous cars written there. That's surreal, that's something actually happening. It still sounds like science fiction to me, but that's so close to being common. We're just right around the corner from it. And just to go down the line of reasoning on what could happen specifically on an autonomous vehicle if it was to get hacked, if somebody was to breach it, not only is personal information vulnerable, which is, it's bad. But if it's autonomous, you can not only know where it is, but you could control the car and tell it where to go. And it makes it so much easier for physical crime to occur, that somebody's there, or you can tell the car to go somewhere it shouldn't be going, and then you could have someone there, I don't know, to rob them or do God knows what, really. But it's kind of a scary thought, especially the autonomous cars ones, that that's such, security has to be so important when it comes to that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see what some of the movies do with some of those implementations, right? Probably Fast 10 just kidnapping people in their Teslas.
Yeah, and that's an iRobot, right? Where the robots take over Will Smith's car.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, you beat me to it, I guess. Yeah, Jacob, what are your thoughts on this?
This is absolutely correct. I love that you didn't focus on, I feel like, what a lot of people focus on when it comes to security of autonomous vehicle, which is essentially, call a spade terrorist attacks of forcing cars to crash into other people, or having cars lose control in the middle of the highway. These are definitely things that are possible whenever your car is connected to the internet to that capacity. But I very much hope, and I just personally don't think we're going to see a whole lot of that, because it's not about crime that's going to hurt people. It's more about what crime is going to pay you.
Yeah, incentivization, right? I mean, some people, I guess, want to cause terror, but I think more people want to try and benefit their life in some way.
Absolutely. I think a lot of what we're going to see isn't necessarily people. We might see people try to steal cars, but more than likely, if you have the capability to hack into somebody's car, a much easier way to steal a car is to essentially turn what's always been known as a cyber attack into a actual physical stealing of a car while it's still in your driveway, and installing ransomware on someone's autonomous vehicle that locks all the doors, shuts off the engine, and you get an email that says, give me $100,000 or your car is never going to be usable again. So you've essentially now you've not just stolen a car, you've stolen a car while it's still sitting in someone's driveway, and you've also found a buyer already.
Yeah.
It's very convenient.
And that's another good point, talking about it being in somebody's driveway. Like, these autonomous vehicles are going to be connecting to your internet every time that you get home to update and to charge and everything, not just eat through cellular data. So it's another point of entry to your home network as well, which is just more IoT things,
Yeah, that's interesting. Cool. So how about from a smart city aspect? And one thing too is, we've been focusing on, what could happen if this happened. And I don't know if this is out of your wheelhouse, pun midway intended. But oh shoot, I was so satisfied with that pun, I forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, so let's start smart cities, and then I'll think of the second half of my question. What issues are facing smart cities specifically?
I'm actually going to defer to Jacob on this one. I'm familiar with the concept of a smart city, but I just haven't done a ton of research, I guess, or haven't gone down that rabbit hole, which I probably will tonight now. Well, do you have anything to add about smart cities, Jacob?
Yeah. It's really crazy talking about 5G in a professional sense, because it does just start to sound like a sci-fi book after a while. But it kind of is. We're kind of living it, which is a lot of fun. We're going to see a lot of the same problems if attacks do occur. Luckily with smart cities, what we're being backed by in those situations is going to be those government entities. It is going to be entities like federal crime prevention and the DoD and things like that. So you're going to see much better security for public places, hopefully. But in the event that attacks do occur, you could see a ransomware attack of an entire city. If somebody far removed who had the right skills could say, I've shut off all public transportation in the city of Chicago until you give me $1.3 billion. Well, $1.3 billion is chump change compared to the amount of money lost if Chicago transportation is shut down for even just 20 minutes.
Or you can even look at that pipeline, right? That just you can even look at that pipeline in was it Florida, I think, that oil pipeline that got ransomware.
Yeah.
I'm unfamiliar with that.
Oh yeah, that was like a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month now. I don't know what is time, but yeah, they shut off the or they hacked in and did a ransomware on an oil pipeline, and that's why gas prices spiked so much a couple of weeks ago. I think I'm pretty sure they wound up paying it, and then I read that they recovered the majority of it. But yeah, that's as far as I know. I don't know if you know anything further than that, Jacob. But
That's pretty much the gist of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a large gas company that somebody had just gotten a hold of a ton of personal information about them, and said we're not giving it back till they give us a ton of money, and they got the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting talking about these kinds of attacks because one way you could use a smart city as an attack is I'm going to hack into the mainframe, which is such a 2000 spy movie thing to say. But I'm actually going to hack into the main system of this city, and I'm going to set off the crime detection devices that I know are over on this block off to make it emulate, a shooting or a bank robbery or something. I'm going to make it really, really big and loud. And in the meantime, me and my team are going to be robbing this jewelry store on the other side of town because we now know that all the law enforcement have gone somewhere else. This is a really fun heist movie kind of situation, but unfortunately, I really don't think we're going to see attacks like that. Like I said in the car one, whenever you have somebody who has this kind of skill set, because we're talking about it in a way that just your average criminal can do this, these events are going to be extremely rare.
Right.
And there are not many people with these skill sets. And the fact of the matter is that I could rob a jewelry store and get maybe a couple of $1 million out of the jewels. Or like I said earlier, I could use this exact same system I just brought into to make the Chicago transportation go dark, and I can get billions of dollars out of that payout. So which payout am I going to go with?
Yeah, and this has been a little bit of fear mongering, but I agree. I don't think it's going to happen, or we'll see it in any large scale whatsoever. Primarily, like you were saying with the network slicing, right? If everything's sliced off separately, you can't take out the entire transit system. Like maybe one bus or one train might be offline or something. And even if you wanted to get really advanced with it, I almost wonder if it'd be possible to say for a autonomous vehicle, say every most intensive, I guess, part of the vehicle maybe needs 2 parts to operate, right? So like you could say A plus B is what makes you go. And if you had those sliced off, then, they would only have access to one, not both being able to make a difference. So I'm not sure if it's set up that way currently, but I would imagine that that's going to be the future if, I'm sure autonomous vehicles are definitely sticking around. So yeah. I'm going to move forward just for the sake of time again. This has been a very fun conversation for sure. Let's see. Okay, next question. With my mouse will cooperate. With 5G fixed wireless, what role will cellular carriers take regarding network security?
Well, I think it's important to talk about what 5G fixed wireless is, because I actually didn't know until I was researching for this. As far as I understand, it's 5G as your primary internet source. Mm-hmm. So it's going to replace your ISP. And 5G, especially millimeter wave 5G, has the opportunity to compete with basically any ISP. Even like fiber optic. And one of the biggest, prohibitive things about fiber optic is the cost of installing the lines. It's a very expensive process. It involves coordination with the city, and They got to get cats out there digging up dirt and everything. But with millimeter wave, which doesn't penetrate well, but it's not that complicated to install an external antenna on a building. It's really not that expensive either, and you could configure your network to run off of millimeter wave or just 5G. And get comparable speeds to a physical line being ran, which is really incredible. And I guess at that point, though, cellular carriers become your ISP. But I mean, I don't really see much of a difference on the security side. I don't know if Jacob could add to that.
Just real quick, I want to punch in. So not just the cost for laying line for traditional fiber or regular ISPs, but it's time intensive too. So if you have something like for a construction site, right? You could literally just get your wireless router, plug it in, and then you're good to go. You don't have to wait for the cable company to come and lay line. Additionally, if you're like super rural, you can just get a real nice antenna with it, and then you're good to go as well. So it provides. It's going to be really interesting. It's going to provide connectivity to a lot of places that don't have it. And even like the United States, I'm pretty sure it's something like 7% or 8% of the US doesn't have access to high-speed internet, which the FCC says is like 20 megs download or faster, which is still pretty slow. That's not high speed, but the fact that 7% of the US doesn't even have access to that is wild. But they could get close to fiber speeds, and I would think at least exceeding fiber speeds in some areas with fixed wireless. So a little detour, but
yeah, I mean, specifically millimeter wave. But
yeah, I mean, with fixed wireless, I mean, I think millimeter wave is still one of those things that's on the horizon. But I mean, T-Mobile is already pushing fixed wireless greatly, and in the low and mid band space. And no, you're not going to see, that 300 down that you're seeing with your current ISP maybe, but for the people out there who, like you were saying, don't have an ISP today, they can get 60 to 100 down. That is very reasonable and very usable for most things. And they can do that with wireless today with low and mid band, which is insane. That's going to be so incredible. I mean, it's going to open up a whole new world of possibilities for people in the U.S. And in other places in other countries who have lived without internet for a very long time. But I actually don't mind this getting taken up by fixed wireless just a little bit, because honestly, I feel the exact same. I don't think the world's going to change very much at all, because I think it's easy for us to think about fixed wireless as a brand new thing whenever it's truly not. We've had cell phones in our pockets for years now, and we're at a point now where a lot of the population has unlimited data plans. And if you don't have an unlimited data plan, you're still using the data on your cell phone. That is an ISP. That is an internet source that you're paying for, and it's providing you a service from the internet. And that kind of source still requires security, still requires the same amount of security, spectrum is required to follow coming into your home. So, I mean, it's kind of the same protocols, and they're going to be following the same protocols they are with the cell phone in your pocket to the router that's in your home, which is very, very secure protocols.
Absolutely. That was a fun diversion, but no, I think that fits in very well with it. I'm going to advance us to learning more about 5G solutions. I know we're coming up on time here, so I want to make sure we get everything. All right, so for those of you who are interested in learning more about 5G solutions, we have a few different options for you. First is our webinars. We cover a ton of topics and have already hosted several 5G webinars this year. You can find the ones we've hosted before on our YouTube channel, RCN Technologies. And be sure to keep an eye on our LinkedIn for upcoming webinars. Next, on our website, we curate news, articles, PR, etc., on all sorts of topics. You can find all of this and more at www.rcntechnologies.com. Third, be sure to keep up with us on social media. Aside from keeping up to date on our webinars and other related content, it's a great way to engage with us if you guys have any questions or need any advice about your technology. With that being said, there is one more way to keep up to date, and that is to talk with us. We are experts in the 5G and LTE network space. We have over 110 years of wireless experience with a focus on providing the right solution every time. We'll talk to you, learn about your business, and help you plan a roadmap to 5G. So the best way to go about doing that, we've got our Director of Sales, Gary Manise, his contact information up here. You can reach out to him for that free one-on-one 5G consultation that I mentioned before. He's a great guy. He'll figure out exactly what your business needs, and he'll definitely take care of you. So we have 8 minutes left. Yeah, we can probably knock through a couple of these. Let's see. First one. Is there any difference in security of private 5G versus public 5G? Jacob, I think you might know something about this. What are your thoughts there?
Oh gosh, there is a difference. Public 5G is best way to put it is not a big concern to you, is the way I'll say it. As a business owner or as somebody who's thinking about getting this installed, what's going on with 5G publicly really isn't a big concern. It's being done really well, and really we have no control over it. Only the big carriers do. However, whenever it comes to a private cellular network, you're absolutely in control of that, and you need to know how to take control of that. You need somebody who really knows what they're doing to set those kinds of networks up, and you need somebody who really knows security to ensure that network is nice and secure. But the really cool thing about PCN in general is that it offers so many advantages over things like Wi-Fi. In terms of security, a PCN box is going to transfer a frequency signal, and it's going to go to a SIM card in a device. And if a device doesn't have that SIM card, it's very unlikely that it's going to be able to talk to anything else. Whereas, I could go back to my apartment this evening and scan for Wi-Fi's and see how many of them don't have passwords,
Right.
And so that the nature of it in general is going to provide a much, much, much stronger security feature, but it's still no substitute for having a security expert and a cellular expert who knows what they're doing in creating these systems.
Absolutely. Cool. So I'm seeing one other question on here. When is the right time to bring 5G into my organization?
Josh, you wanna try to tackle this one?
This is a tough one. I mean, I often think about this. A lot of points that we brought up today, I think, are important to consider, especially what Jacob said about coverage, like whether or not 5G is really in your area, especially if you have mobile people, because it's like a big reason you might be interested in 5G is if your business constantly has employees out in the field. Because if it's not available, then you're not going to benefit from it, I guess. It's got to be there for you. That and just, I don't know if Jacob has anything to add to that.
No, yeah, there was a reason why I used the verbiage "try to answer it" because I don't really think we have an answer for it as we sit today. When is the right time? When is the wrong time? If you're in a place like Chicago, New York, you can do it now. Doesn't mean that now's the right time, but you're totally within the capability of doing that and having great 5G service in your area. But it is easy for me to say if your company is based out of the middle of Nebraska, right now is not the right time for you at all. So it really is going to depend. We're going to reach a point whenever it's going to saturate our country, and it's going to be only within the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, I think it's soon, relatively soon, but
yeah, it's one of those things that even if it's not the right time necessarily to implement, definitely go ahead and start having those conversations. Definitely go ahead and start planning for it. Again, you should take advantage of that URL we had, schedule that consultation, because we're great at helping you guys with that. And like you guys said, it's going to be everywhere in a couple of years. It's already I saw a stat. I did a webinar with T-Mobile last week, and they have 92% of highways in the U.S. covered already with 5G. So it's we don't always hear everything, but it's moving along pretty well.